Good afternoon, everybody. Namaste. I welcome you all
Namaskar,
to this
everyone.
series. Namaste, Kadambari ji. So, today I welcome you all to the series on early childhood. And this is again organized by Sri Aurobindo Foundation for Indian Culture. And we have with us in this session Kadambari ji, educator, writer, I would also say conscious parent. And to probably take us through this whole series, we will be doing this for the next 4 Saturdays as well. And in this session, we will delve a little deep into the age group, into understanding the age group of 0 to 6, and explore the role of parents, teachers in kind of impacting what impact can they create on the child's life between this age group. And we'll try to make this session as interactive as possible. And we also I request all the viewers to kind of type in your questions whenever you have questions in this related to this topic in the chat box, and we will try to address them in the session. And so to begin with, Kadambari ji, we have this beautiful age group 0 to 6. I would also call these years as the foundation years. And it is also the early childhood, which is the most important age group
Right,
for any individual's life, right?
right.
So I would request you to throw some light on the areas or domains of growth and development pertaining to this age group specifically, and
Right.
explain how is it different in terms of growth, development, behavior compared to other age groups.
Right. So, Harshita, like we've been, this is like our second episode for the series, and
Right.
we had touched upon the domains in a previous talk as well, and the first episode of our series, enhancing early childhood. And so,
Right.
coming back to the domains for our viewers, the domains of development primarily are the physical development, the
Right.
mental development, the emotional development, psychological, the social
Social.
development, development of the language, and also, as Sri Aurobindo and the mother have thrown light on another very important domain, which many theorists miss out on, is the spiritual domain.
Spiritual.
And and that is very necessary, and it starts very early. It is not when we retire or we are thinking we are on the last legs of life. So these
Right.
are basically the domains, and we have spoken about them in detail in our previous discussions. And the significance, like you said, of this age group 0 to 6 is immense. It is called the incredible infancy. And it is called the incredible infancy because of the fact that it's the foundation years for your life to come as an adult.
Right.
So in this age group, what we need to ensure for our children from 0 to 6, and even later, middle childhood and adolescence, is a lot of positive experiences. And is focusing especially on 0 to 6 sensorial experiences, because they
Right.
learn a lot from experiencing through their senses. And another important component is also, which often parents and teachers miss out on, is time out, which means
Hmm.
allowing the child to get bored. Because when they get bored, they also become creative. So this
Hmm.
period requires us to create a lot of positive experiences and an environment for learning, free play, structured play, timeout, all of that. So it is an incredible period of life. And that's why more and more awareness is being spread to focus and be very alert during the first years of your child, or you as a teacher for your children in the class, or even as a community, to be very sensitive towards children, even our neighbor's child, you know,
Right.
relative's
Hmm.
child, any child. As a community, we have to ensure that our children get a lot of positive experiences. So there's this one theorist. His name is Robert Havinghurst. You must have heard about him.
Right.
His fame is related to this theory called developmental task theory. So
Hmm. Hmm.
he says that child develops, or an individual or a human develops the ability to perform certain tasks based on age. And as they step from one stage to another stage, once they've successfully acquired those abilities to perform those age appropriate tasks, you know.
Right.
So in 0 to 6 years of age bracket, he says to begin to crawl, to begin to walk, to begin to taste your first foods, to begin to even to be able to control the elimination of body wastes, to begin to speak, to begin to begin your foundations for reading, language development, foundations for socializing. So broadly speaking, 0 to 6 has these kind of parameters that we are looking into, as in terms of domains, in terms of why it is the incredible infancy, and what are the kind of task related milestones they achieve.
Okay, excellent. I think, yeah, broadly you have covered almost all the important aspects. So, can we consider these as the smaller subsets for understanding this age groups, or do you feel are there any other categories for us to understand this age group in a little more depth?
Right. So it is actually, Harshita, you know, when we say 0 to 6, it sounds like only 6 years. So
Right.
when somebody is 30 years old, then working and being friends with the 36-year-old doesn't seem that much of a difference. But in the early years of growth and development, those 6 years is a huge gap. Every 6 months, there is a difference in the way
change, right?
there's a phenomenal change in the way children perceive, process, and respond. Every
Absolutely.
6 months, every few months. So in that sense, yes, theorists and experts have subdivided this larger age group of 0 to 6, commonly known as early childhood, into 4 or 5 subdivisions. The first one is the prenatal stage, which is from conception to birth. It'll be interesting to tell our viewers that in some cultures, prenatal stage is considered even before conception. It is when the parents begin to believe, or they start inviting a soul in their life. When they want a child, that's the first thought of wanting to have a child is considered as prenatal, beginning of prenatal.
Right.
In very many ancient cultures. Then comes the infancy to toddlerhood, which is usually from 0 to 2 years. Then early childhood is 2 to 6 years. Middle childhood is 6 to 11 years. And adolescence is 11 to 18 years. Right. Now, I'd like to add here that these are very accepted, generally accepted, universally accepted definitions for these stages in early childhood. However, sometimes we will see that certain theorists will consider toddlerhood up till age 3. So those kind of differences will come across, and parents and educators should not get confused, because those are that particular theorist's observation and they're entitled to that. And several times, 1 year here, 1 year there will be there. And also country, and in country, this also varies from nation to nation. Several countries will define toddlers as up till age 3 or 4, or several other countries will define toddlers as age 2. So this is just for clarifying for the sake of our viewers.
Right. Yes, I think with this categorization now, it's pretty clear that in this session, we're going to focus much more on 0 to 6. In that 0 to 6 also, like you've said, it's not like one full stage, but there are substages also. So you have mentioned about the first stage being prenatal period. So can we have a little discussion? I mean, I think we can in fact have an entire session around prenatal period, but to probably summarize for our viewers, how would you explain the importance of this prenatal period?
You know, in one of my workshops that I was doing with educators, the question was thrown out at all of us who were the participants, that what is that period in life that has the maximum amount of growth? What is that period in a human being's life that has the maximum amount of growth? And many people were just, they didn't have an answer. The answer is the maximum amount of growth in a human being's life happens in the prenatal stage, when from a single celled organism, the baby becomes a fully functional human being and with remarkable abilities to integrate him or herself in the world and atmosphere around them.
Adapt, right?
So that, like you said, we can have an entire session on prenatal, but just this much information should help our viewers and anybody understand how important that is. The maximum amount of growth is happening in these 9 months. Imagine the significance.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you've said, from a single cell, how the development takes place, and all the domains, like you mentioned, physical domain, development, emotional, physical, and even several kinds of development, I think, occur from that stage onwards, and how we all know the mother's lifestyle as well as the surrounding environmental factors can have an immense effect on this prenatal stage. And also for viewers' information, there we have a website, mothersglow.in. So we really recommend all of you to, if you're interested in understanding more about prenatal development, please look into it. I'm sure you would get a lot of insights about this particular topic. So moving on. So because our main focus in today's session is early childhood. So if you could help us understand a little bit of infancy and toddlerhood. So what would you like to share around this stage?
So basically, infancy, like I said, more or less from 0 to 1, we call children infants. And then toddlerhood is 2 years to up till 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. Like I said, sometimes there will be variations in the way different educators or parents or theorists have looked at the age bracket. So in this, motor development, cognitive development, intellectual development, social development is mostly through the experiences gathered through the senses of the child. So the listening child is listening, is touching, is tasting, experiencing through listening, touching, tasting, looking. Most of the experiences are around these areas. And in fact, it will be interesting probably to share with our viewers what some theorists think about this age group. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, talking about from the field of psychology, there are many psychologists. Specifically, I would like to probably add on a little bit of what Jean Piaget had talked about this particular stage. So how Piaget initially focused a lot on how, as infants, start to understand the world around. They start to form certain mental concepts in perceiving the world around. For example, when we were an infant, we look at a dog. We need to understand this is a dog. It has 4 legs, it has a tail, and it barks. So the understanding around these aspects is the way in which we perceive the mental world. So these are the small schemas, according to Piaget, that we try to develop. So as and how we try to develop, we get a better understanding of the world around, and we'll be able to interact also with this environment around. So the schema development is extremely important in infancy. So moving a little ahead, like you also have mentioned, the sensorial development. So Piaget has also thoroughly spoken about how in this stage, children try to experience the world through their senses. So they learn how to suck, they learn how to swallow, they learn how to crawl, they learn how to grab objects. These are the very small actions, I mean, we think, which are very common to occur, but for a child, it is a milestone. Just reaching out, grabbing an object is a milestone for a child.
Right.
And yeah, so this kind of a development is also very important. The more there is stimulation from the environment, from the caregiver, so the role of parent becomes very critical and crucial in this age period. To what extent is the child stimulated in enhancing the senses of the child? So that there's a lot of sensations, movements from the child's side in order to understand the world around. So would you like to add something here? Because there's so much to say about it.
Yes, there's a lot. There's a lot that we can say. Like, so Piaget called this stage the sensory motor stage. And the term that he's given to this stage is self-explanatory. It is through learning through the senses. And you used another term called schema, which basically I would like to add here and say that every child is born with some schema, which is a set of information, knowledge that they already have. And the learning journey is basically building on more and more schema through the process of adjustment. They take in information, they need some time to process it, and then again respond back to the world. So like you took the example of the dog, probably the first time a child sees a dog, it is like a concept, like it's probably the child doesn't, in that first instance when they're seeing the dog, is not when he or she will understand everything about the dog. Then slowly, oh, the dog has 4 legs, oh, the dog is barking. And also auditory abilities will develop slowly. And even if there's a dog in the next farmland, the child will be able to tell you, oh, I can hear a dog barking. So this is building onto the schemas. And if we compare Piaget to Freud, who was a psychosexual theorist, he called this stage the oral stage.
Yes,
again, there are similarities. Of course, both theorists have some differences in the way they look at how the child is processing and responding. But yet, even Freud calls this stage an oral stage, which means the child wants to experience everything by taking all the items around him or her to the mouth.
Right. Yes. So, adding to what you said, I think Freud specifically, of course, Piaget has entirely tried to understand cognitive development per se, and Freud focused on personality development overall through his stages. And Freud,
often parents get a little confused that when we use the term sexual, that for little children, how is that applicable? It basically simply means pleasure. What he's trying to say is that children get some pleasure and satisfaction. That's just the term that he's used. He's entitled to use it. So children receive a lot of pleasure and satisfaction through taking things to their mouth and experiencing.
Absolutely. So yeah, like you said, Freud had identified the parts of the body which actually has this sexual energy. It is contained, and the more a child is provided the stimulation, he's able to release the sexual energy, and that's when he feels pleasurable. Right? And yeah, mouth is the zone of pleasure for a child in the early years.
Right.
And the role of parents here again becomes very important in the way how much stimulation is this child provided with respect to seeking pleasure through the mouth. So is the child overstimulated? Again, the way the child is stimulated has an effect on the personality of the child.
Right.
So if the child is understimulated, you would see that a lot of people, a lot of us also have these habits of biting our nails, using aggressive language, smoking. So these habits could be a result of understimulation, and the child is wanting to always do something to engage the mouth. So this continues to adulthood as well.
Right. Yes, of course. And the role of parents does parents and educators becomes important in understanding and creating that balance of stimulation. And I have often observed parents asking their children to take their hands away from the mouth when they're sucking their thumb, or they're taking items to their mouth. I think they should allow them, parents and educators should allow children to experience through the oral, through the senses of the mouth, of taste, because taking that experience away from them would be detrimental. Then again, like you said, a balance has to be created. We don't need overstimulation, but we don't need understimulation. Of course, we don't want you to allow your child to keep taking sand in the mouth. So situation to situation, you have to keep seeing what decision you will make. But it's good to have these kind of theories which have been formulated by these theorists after observing for a long time large group of children. So these are very useful theories to keep in the back of our mind, yet they are not binding. We have to take
we shouldn't think of this like a box in which these are determining the parenting rules. It is not that per se, but understanding the world or understanding the child from these theories really help in making the parenting business, I think the role of parenting, pretty flexible, and it kind of helps us to fit into these rather than them trying to fit into theories, but you trying to match to this. So moving on, I think Piaget also spoke a little bit of how the child in the early childhood itself is also able to gain an understanding of something called object permanence. That is, the child is able to understand that, okay, if something is hidden from the environment, it's not that it's lost forever, but it still has its position in this world. So trying to get these small concepts, and also another very important aspect of a child moving on from this object permanence is egocentrism. So that is also something which I think we observe in many children. We think that we try to always say, learn to share, learn to care, learn to give. But from a child's perspective, it's their way of growing that they are able to see the world from only their perspective. And it is difficult for them to see from another person's perspective. However, I think I see a lot of children also deviating from this. What do you think, Kadambari ji?
So now we are going into the next stage of child within the age group 0 to 6, which is early childhood. Although this entire range 0 to 6 is referred to as early childhood more popularly and commonly, from 3 to 6, age 3 to 6 is what we call early childhood more specifically. So in this stage, again, the motor abilities, the cognitive abilities are getting more refined. You will see children getting ready to write, hold a grip, that is in the area of fine motor development, being able to throw a ball, catch a ball, that is an example in the area of gross motor. Cognitive abilities, like you said, you had given a nice example of object permanence, which children can be introduced to from a very young age, from a simple game called peekaboo. So what does peekaboo tell us? Peekaboo basically is a very simple game which actually develops a very important concept of called object permanence, as you had said. So in this, the children begin to understand that something which they can't see or they cease to see doesn't mean it ceases to exist. And this is why this stage, like you mentioned, Piaget said that this is where they are also developing symbolism, which is basically giving a name to an object and spinning a whole story around it. Abstract thinking, creative thinking, this starts developing. Role play, that starts developing. So if we talk about Piaget and this specific age group, then of course symbolism is one, which is basically abstract thinking, creative thinking starts building up, where you're associating objects with something else, a story that you have built, concept of object permanence. Then another thing which you mentioned was being able to see the world only from their own point of view, which is
Right.
centricism. Like you are the
Yeah.
center of all the whole world. And therefore, you can only perceive everything from your own point of view only. And
Mm-hmm.
egocentrism is also there, which means your point of view is the only point of view. You're not, your intellect or your cognitive abilities are not, it's age appropriate behavior. It's not like it's a bad child if they're egocentric. It's a bad child if they think that the world revolves around them. It's age appropriate behavior. That's why
Yeah.
these theorists are breaking it down. So for our parents and educators, the takeaway is that we are telling you that the theorists think like this, that there is an element of abstract thinking, creative thinking, and when your child picks up a toy and says, no, this is not a truck, I think this is a tree, that's
Yeah.
age appropriate. Don't think, no, don't say that, no, I don't, this is not a tree. How silly of you to say that it's a tree. No, allow that creative thinking, and allow and understand that they are able to see the world only from their own point of view, because it's age appropriate, right? And
Right.
Freud has come up in this age group. He has subdivided it into two further subsections. One is the 1:3, which he calls the anal stage,
Anal stage. Right.
and then is the 3 to 6, which he calls the phallic stage.
Phallic.
Yeah. So would you like to expand on that?
Yes. So, yeah, talking a little bit about anal stage, I think it's very important. In this stage, what Freud mainly focuses on is the toilet training. So, how is the child trained to kind of defecate or hold on? When is the time? When is the right place that the child can actually urinate? So, this whole act of training the child towards learning about the whole toilet control is the toilet training, and which happens in anal stage. So the role of parents again become very important in this, which also has an impact on the child's personality, is in what way is the parent training the child? Is the parent being very harsh? And again, if the parent is being very harsh, there could be a possibility that the child is going to be very stubborn, the child is going to be extremely perfectionist. So these kind of personality traits could be a result of the child, the parents being very harsh with toilet training. On the other hand, again, if the parents are extremely lenient, that they're not really helping the child learn this, learn to control, learn to regulate, then the child can also kind of get in certain traits of being very disorderly or extremely untidy. So they very messy, disorganized. So they could result in this kind of personality as well.
Right.
Right.
Good point. Again, it all comes down to creating the right balance. Right. We spoke about in this for oral stage of which Freud speaks about, and the sensory motor stage which Piaget speaks about. And again, we don't need overstimulation or understimulation. In the same sense, I think what Freud was probably also trying to tell here to educators and parents who are trying to train their children, as of course in this age group we will see children are beginning to go from a stage of dependence to independence, and toilet training is a big part. Being fully toilet trained is a big part of being independent. So yet there is a balance, because it is age appropriate behavior, in the sense again, now the child is deriving pleasure by holding on, like having the control of eliminating body wastes in his or her own hand. So
Absolutely.
Instructing them too much, that we directing them when they should really eliminate their body wastes, at what time, excessive discipline about that can affect their personality in one way. And if we don't bring in any kind of practice, any kind of mild discipline, or initiate some kind of potty training, also toilet training, then that will result in another kind of personality. Now again, that doesn't mean I just don't want our viewers to start looking around at people and their personality traits and keep connecting it back to whatever we are saying, because these are only some of the factors and some of the theories. So we have to don't start judging each other sitting around already. that this must have happened in your childhood and this must have happened in your childhood. But yeah, what he tried to say was that go easy on in this stage also, because they're deriving pleasure by having the control of eliminating their body waste in their own hands.
Right, absolutely. So yes, so talking a little about this age of where around almost 2 to 3 years and then moving to 6 years, I think again relating back to what Piaget has said, I think they also learn a few more skills of, like you earlier you were mentioning, of reading, writing. So they also begin to understand a little bit about numbers, little bit about certain concepts, to connect few things. And they're also also in the previous stage, I think it is very common for children to engage in make believe play. So it's more or less, they look at this doll. This doll is my mother, and she's the child, and maybe the kitchen cooking sets. So they're kind of surpassing that stage in when they are moving towards the end of early childhood. They're also learning to understand the difference between, okay, this is an imagination and this is more of reality, what we exist in. So that kind of thinking is also developing as the child is ending towards the early childhood.
True. That's very right. As they are proceeding towards middle childhood, there will always be some overlaps from one stage to another. And child to child also, we will see differences. Some children can perform certain functions which belong to the next stage in the previous stage. Some children take their time and perform the functions pertaining to one stage in the next stage. So that kind of flexibility should be there in the mind of the parent and educator. And that is why we reiterate again and again that the child has his own individuality. And like we had mentioned in our previous session, psyche, so that has to be taken into account. So yes, this is broadly how we break down this age group, beautiful age group 0 to 6. And I hope our viewers have got a good understanding of what are the subdivisions. And do you think we should reiterate the subdivisions once again?
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea before we end. Yeah.
So the subdivision.
Like to,
so the
maybe
subdivision.
You can go.
So the subdivisions again, viewers, is prenatal, which is conception to birth. And like I said, in many ancient cultures, it begins much before conception, with the conception of the thought or the feeling of having a baby. Then comes the infancy and toddlerhood, which is from 0 to 2. In certain countries, certain schools with certain group of parents, this can also be from 0 to 3. Early childhood is 3 to 6. Middle childhood is 6 to 11, and then adolescence is 11 to 18.
Absolutely. So I was just trying to add that the reason why we chose these theorists to focus on is also that Piaget's theory, specifically, if you look at, there are so many schools actually who have incorporated their syllabus and curriculum based on Piaget's theory, because if you understand the cognitive development this way, like you have also mentioned in the earlier talks about age appropriate learning. So that concept actually has been derived by understanding the Piaget's development. And also, most importantly, the readiness concept. When is the child ready? My child is not really able to do abstract thinking, but how can you expect a child in early childhood to completely understand, imagine, and then construct a lot? Right, so they're just beginning to develop these. So to get an idea of that, I think that was the reason why, we wanted to touch upon Piaget. So that was one thing which I had in mind, how it is very important for the parents and teachers to integrate these practices in the way they are actually impacting the child's life. So now that we've come to the end of discussion, would you like to add anything else, Kadambari ji, before we close?
Like I said, our main objective was to help our parents and educators and viewers at large to understand how this 6 years can be broken down into much smaller subdivisions, so that our what we do for our children in terms of creating learning experiences, positive experiences, and what we expect from our children is reasonable and matches with their age appropriateness, what their readiness. And then a lot of agony, lot of frustration, irritation, which some educators and parents have, that our child is not doing this or that, will come to rest. The main objective is to create a very, very happy atmosphere for a growing child inside of his family, inside of the classroom. And for that, parents and educators need to understand the main domains of that we are looking at to help the child grow and blossom, and the age appropriate behavior, age appropriate abilities.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful insight, I think, before we close. So I would also like to read what the mother has talked about the ideal child. So mother has beautifully given few characteristics of an ideal child, and I remember when I was in school, we did have an award of the ideal child, which was based on what the mother has said. So the ideal child likes to study when he's at school. He likes to play when he's in the playground. He likes to eat at mealtime. He likes to sleep at bedtime. And always he is full of love for all those around him, full of confidence in the divine grace, full of deep respect for the divine. So these are some of the characteristics of an ideal child. So beautiful. I think these are like the guidelines for which parents and teachers can really focus in enhancing the childhood. Right. So with this, thank you so much, Kadambari ji. It was a wonderful session. It was
we'll
great
meet the viewers and meet everybody again for our third episode next Saturday. Namaskar.
Yeah, thank you so much, viewers. We'll see you again.